All right, here we go. Conflicts in immigration, a spotlight on the Haitian refugee crisis in South Texas. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hi, everyone. This is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis. I'm an attorney, mediator, arbitrator, and I work throughout Texas and Florida online. And today we're going to be having a special discussion with some incredible guests to speak about what's been going on down in Del Rio, Texas, regarding Haitian refugees who have made it across the US border. Since this is a channel that focuses on conflict and conflict resolution, we consider this a form of immigration conflict. And so we're going to have a chat today about what happened, what's going on, the reactions, the responses, and where do we go from here? What are the solutions and what should be done about this conflict? All right, so I'm going to go around and let everyone introduce themselves so that the audience can have a view of who is joining us today. Why don't we start with the ladies first?
Hello, everyone. I'm attorney Shelle Simon. I am an immigration attorney located in Houston, Texas, but serving clients everywhere. I've been an attorney for about 12 years, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Chinwe Daria. I'm also an immigration attorney, and I've been practicing for 11 years. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jean Michel Celestin. I am currently a HHU Board of Director member. Also background with HSC Engineering Quality Management.
All right. So the reason that I invited these folks to come speak with us today is because, first off, they're all good friends of mine. I know them all personally. Attorney Shelle, for example, we've done some immigration work together in the past, and we've worked together. And she's a great lawyer who's going to give her perspective today on immigration generally, asylum claims, refugee status, stuff like that. Same thing with Chinwe. She and I have been speaking about this topic going back years. In fact, I think we were on a TV show together, Chinwe, if you recall.
Yes.
This was probably 2015, 2016-ish. And of course, Jean Michel, back in 2015, 2016, I joined him and several other folks to help start up Houston Haitians United.org. And it's Houston's, I would say, largest Haitian volunteer organization or Haitian group, where folks who are of Haitian descent or who came from the island like I did and who want to get together to show their pride. It's one of the groups that allows us to do that in Houston. So anyway, today we're just going to have a conversation about what's been going on. And we wanted to start off with a brief observations by each person, okay, on what's happened in the last 2 weeks. This has been incredible for those of you who might be overseas, who might not know what's happened. Over the last few weeks, the United States has had a group. I know there's somebody whose phone might need to be muted. But over the last few weeks, there's been a group of predominantly Haitian migrants who have crossed into Texas and settled under a bridge down in Del Rio, Texas. This has made international headlines around the world, and everyone's spoken about it, including President Biden. And to many Americans, what they saw on their television screens were a lot of people trying to stay in the U.S., primarily Haitians who have come due to the conflicts and the problems and the natural disasters that's happened in their country. And so now the controversy of immigration and immigration reform, immigration policy has come up. And so we wanted to talk about this today because of the fact that the government's response was to then basically deport on an emergency basis the flood of folks who had come in rapidly back to Haiti as fast as possible. Well, this has caused a lot of consternation, as you can imagine, with many people feeling that this was somehow inhumane or that this was not even handed because I don't recall that this type of mass deportation has been done in the last number of years to any other group of people. So anyway, I just wanted to go around and get everybody's perspective on what I've just said and what I've just laid out, and what your observations were on what's happened over the last few weeks and your reactions. All right, Shelley, why don't we start with you?
Okay, thank you for having me here. And I definitely want to weigh in on this because, like many people who are watching on TV, it was very horrifying to see. I myself am an immigrant. And as a Black person, as an immigrant watching that, I could not help but see people who look like me, people who literally are like my family. My husband is Haitian, my children are half Haitian. But besides that, I saw people who were not being treated with human dignity and respect. And that to me was horrifying. And I really wanted to weigh in on this topic. Seeking asylum is a legal right by our federal laws and our international laws. So a lot of times when people who are not understanding immigration, they see people coming here and seeking asylum as something illegal. Seeking asylum is not illegal. And Haiti, as we all know, if we've been watching, suffered a devastating earthquake in 2010, most recently suffered another one, and has had their president assassinated. There's a lot of political upheaval, natural disasters, poverty in that country. And so this caused a lot of people to come here. Now, from my perspective, they should be able to seek asylum. And the mass expulsion by the Biden administration is, to me, against international law and just against humanity. I found a quote from Benjamin Johnson, who's AILA's executive director. AILA stands for the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which I'm a part of, that says U.S. asylum and humanitarian law absolutely forbids the Biden administration from the massive and rapid expulsion of Haitian asylum seekers, including families with children from the border region that strips them of any meaningful chance to claim protection. And from my perspective, giving people that chance is just a part of American ideals by wanting people, inviting people to come here and to seek refuge in our country. Just so thank you for allowing me to give my 2 cents.
Yeah, Chinwe, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. I agree with pretty much everything Shelley said. The images, where, I don't know about you guys, was very jarring for me. I didn't know border agents ride horses. That's the first time I'm seeing them on horses with whips. It was just a little bit, too much for me to understand their action, But I think we all pretty much agree that everybody that is Haitian that was at the border that came into the United States has a right to seek asylum. The question is why the Biden administration chose to expel all of them. They're not using the word deportation. They're more like trying to couch it that they're removing them from United States because of the COVID crisis. I think that's the reason they're using the Title 42 is the reason. The question is why that policy was continued. It was started by the Trump administration, why the Biden administration didn't do away with it the way they did away with most other draconian Trump executive orders, like the travel bans that they removed. It's also obvious to everybody that this is like a different strokes for different folks, because most times when you do come into the United States, at least at the very least, you're allowed to file your asylum claim. You may not necessarily be granted, but because it's a discretionary rule, but at least you're allowed to go through the process. And that wasn't the case here. And even though the Biden administration was very critical of the Trump administration with regards to family, the way they treated family, my understanding is some kids and their parents, even though I'm not sure they did separation, but they were removing kids back to, with their family, back to this hostile environment. It's difficult to understand why this was allowed to happen.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today with Mac and the lawyers.
Jean, give me one moment. You have a very strong echo.
Yep.
You may want to sit closer to your microphone.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds a little bit better. I don't hear echo now. All right. Fantastic. So, yeah, just appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk about on this very important topic. And it's something that's really touching for the Haitian community here in Houston. As Houston Haitians United, we've been pretty much on the front line, working with the churches of our communities, working with the business leaders of our communities to always support. And so when we saw this horrendous event happening, it's something that really touched home, because these are our brothers and sisters. And just to see them, women, children, men going through all of this is just very saddening, because one thing we need to understand too is that these people didn't just come directly from Haiti to here, right? So we need to be very clear with that one. This is people that has been living in Brazil, that's been living in Chile, that's been living in all the South American countries and have established lives there, right? So for whatever reason, these countries are not giving these people fair treatment. So as a result, they are fleeing and looking for better opportunity, right? So that's what's happening. So now you have influx of people on the border or trying to get to America to look for opportunities. They can't go back home because we all know the situation that took place. Our president has been assassinated. We had earthquake. There's violence all over the place. I mean, home is not a place where they can go back to. So, of course, they're looking for better and safe opportunities for their families so they can, live a better life. I mean, what human being wouldn't want to do that? I mean, it kind of disturbed me, because when you see the people that's on the other side talking against this, it makes you wonder, where's your humanistic thinking, right? Because put yourself in that situation. Wouldn't you want to find a better place, a better way to live? But they're quick to say, "Oh, these people are going to come to our country. They're going to do." No, these are people that's looking for opportunities. Whenever Haitians come to Houston or anywhere in the U.S., for the most part, they come here to work hard, to provide for their families. You don't see Haitians that's criminals and causing all kind of bad trouble. Yes, you're going to have a certain percentage, like anywhere else, you would have a certain percentage that does. But for the most part, Haitians are looking for opportunity to better themselves, to educate themselves. That we love school, we love to progress in life, right? So it's one of those situations that's very saddening. And HHU as an organization, when we saw that yes, this is our duty. So of course we stepped in the front line, and we've been working with NACC, the organization that's here in Houston that we partner up here with, which is a disaster relief organization. NACC. So we partner up with them. They located in the north side of Houston. Anytime there's a disaster that takes place, they've always willing to help. So we partner up with them and we work with them and other. Actually, we were just recently working with the earthquake relief. And so now all of a sudden this happened. So again, we're working together and we've been processing literally hundreds and hundreds of Haitians. I mean, to a point where there's been like buses, like loads of buses. I think for a period there was like two or three buses that's coming in with 65 people on each bus coming into that facility nightly, right? So we had like 3 shifts set up to try to help these people. So a lot was going on. So HHU has been supporting and helping because we feel like, hey, this could be our brothers. These are our brothers and sisters. And so we've been helping them to get connected with their sponsors to help them out. So I mean, we're on the front line, and we feel like this is a dire need. We have to help out. And Texas always represent differently. We here in Texas, we do things a little bit differently. We show the love, we show appreciation to our people, and that's what we've been doing. So I appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation because I feel like this is going to be some interesting topics that's going to help the refugees that are spread out throughout the U.S. find answers that they're looking for.
And thank you for that, Jean Michel. So on the screen, I am sharing 2 websites of the Houston Haitian United.org website, along with the
NACC.
NACChelps.org. They're both based in Houston. If you are listening to this on the podcast, just head over to the YouTube channel Lawyers and Mediators International, and you'll be able to find the video that we're recording now, and you'll be able to see this. But Houston Haitian United.org and NACChelps.org in case you want to contribute or volunteer in any way.
Right. And if you are trying to go over there, please sign in and make sure you let them know that you're coming over there because we have a link that people can just easily sign up. That way, if you want to go and volunteer. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much for that. So I would, as far as my observation goes, let me stop sharing the screen. Okay, as far as my observations goes, back in the late 80s, me and my family came to this country, okay, to seek a better life. And it was at a time where immigration was a hot topic back in the late 80s under Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
And nothing seems to have changed, right? We are still discussing conflicts and immigration for the last number of decades. But I remember the opportunity that we were given to be allowed to stay here in this country. And that opportunity translated into a whole lot of things. You know, I'm an attorney, I got a master's degree in education, my sister's a doctor, my brother has a PhD. And it's the fact that my parents have worked so hard and taken advantage of the opportunity that was presented to them. Okay. So there is a discussion about illegal immigration. And it is an important issue. It's pertinent. It needs to be addressed. And a country does need borders. It needs a rule of law. Absolutely. At the same time, that same country that we're in has laws that pertain to refugees and asylum seekers. And all I want is for those laws to be observed in ways that protect human dignity. You know, the word that Shelley used earlier, right? It was about dignity. And I think that the history of this country where a new group attempts to come in, the Irish went through it, the Italians went through it. It doesn't matter. Every time a new group, remember the Chinese Expulsion Act? I mean, this has always been the case where there's then conflict that exists between the group that's trying to come in and the group that's already here. But we all know one fact, and that is the United States is a land of immigrants. Okay. Again, we need to have the talk about legal immigration. That's absolutely needs to happen. I just don't like the fact that folks are being, basically rounded up and deported in mass, including, as Chinwe pointed out, children who hold visas from Brazil, children who hold visas from Chile. It's not like these kids were even born in Haiti. They're being sent to a country that they don't even know. Okay. They were from another country, but our government has decided to send them back to a country where they're not even from.
Exactly.
But in a country that then also has a lot of problems, it wasn't those kids' fault. Okay, so that the dignity part is what I hope people focus in on, to then try to propel action, to then try to get solutions for this, because I don't want to see this happen again. So the good news is, fortunately, there are a whole lot of Haitians that were allowed to stay to have their cases heard. It does not mean that their cases have merit. If the case does not have merit, a judge will give them due process and send them back appropriately. But at least they will have their voices heard. And so that's what I want to see happen. Okay, not a mass deportation where that's not even taken into consideration. So, guys, as we move on onto the conversation, we discussed what happened. Okay, let's delve in a little bit more about what happened from three perspectives. One, Haiti itself. Why is this happening? Because of the situation in Haiti. Okay. And two, the US refugee asylum policy. And finally, what's going on? Why did or how did this migration to the border suddenly happen so fast and so quickly? Because I think it caught everybody, off guard. So go ahead and give me your thoughts. Shelley, do you want to speak on this about what happened in the history?
Well, I can definitely touch on, the mass deportation or mass mass expulsion of what's going on. We mentioned Title 42, and this was Trump's policy that allowed the border agents to quickly expel migrants to Mexico or their home countries without a chance to apply for asylum. And we saw, that as an immigration attorney, definitely saw, programs like MPP, which is the Remain in Mexico program. And a lot of people were very horrified at these programs. But at least they were allowed to remain in Mexico. With this mass expulsion, people at least should have the right to ask for asylum. That is the right that they should have. And I think just the mass expulsion and sending people back without their voices heard is a major, major problem. And it's setting a wrong precedent. And, as an immigration attorney, to see that, I just don't want that to be the precedent because, as you said, Mac, we have rules for asylum, we have rules for refugees, we do have policies in place. Let's follow those policies. Let's give these people dignity with asking for this. It is not illegal for them to ask. And so, that's something that really terrifies me is what precedent are we setting as a nation and what precedent are we setting in the world, on the world stage, that we are not allowing people to ask for asylum, and why is it different for the Haitian migrants? In my opinion, I've never observed or heard of anybody being, whipped at or being chased away on horses. Um, at least I've never heard of that before, and so why are they being treated differently? We've had caravans. I mean, we've all watched the news. We've seen caravans of people been coming and coming and coming. They should be allowed to ask for asylum.
Okay, Chinwe.
I believe that the Biden administration is self-correcting as they're going along. I know that some of the people that they're allowing to stay in the United States will be able to seek asylum. It's just unfortunate that they've removed a significant percentage of the people that came. I think the question is why were they taken by surprise? I'm not sure how those people just assembled at the same time. There are various, theories as to how and why they all came at the same time. But the the key thing I think is there's already TPS for Haitians currently ongoing. The Biden administration was able to expand, during the Trump administration, they shrunk it to almost nothing. The Biden administration has been able to expand it to over 100,000 applicants, I believe, per year. But I think given this influx, what maybe they should do is expand the time to allow this set of people to also be eligible for TPS, because asylum, especially in Texas, it's not easy to win. The percentage rates of approval is really very low in Texas. And since most of them are in Texas, they are most likely going to be processed through the Texas judicial court system, which is not favorable to asylum seekers. So that's one of the things I think that could be done, expand the TPS, because I don't think they're eligible to apply for TPS, given that they're just arriving.
Yes, she's correct with that the TPS, they would no longer be eligible to apply for it because July 29th was a date that it expanded to. So anyone who arrived after July 29th would not be able to seek those benefits. And for those who don't know, TPS is temporary protected status. It's a status given to not only Haitians, but many other countries who are seeking some protection here in the United States from deportation. Maybe their country has been through hurricanes, devastation, political upheavals, and this allows them to work. It gives them a work permit and protects them. And so I absolutely agree with Chinwe that I would love to see that extended out. If it was a perfect world, I would have loved to have seen temporary protected status be offered to those who came at the border, especially, since you are sending them back to a country that many of them have not been in. As Jean Michel pointed out, many of these children have been born in Chile and Brazil. I know for myself, I have clients like that as well. They have not been to these countries in years, or they may not even know this country. So you're sending them back to a place that is not even home. They have not been to, and if the place has been devastated by the earthquake, literally there's no home there. So you're sending them to a very dangerous and unstable condition. And I'm not sure if that's something that the Biden administration took into account.
Yeah, Jean Michel.
I definitely think that the U.S. should just be considerate, right? The opportunities that is offered to your Afghanistan, your Cubans, and all these other nations that are looking for support and help. I think the same thing should be offered for the Haitians. Like the ladies were mentioning, yes, TPS would be fantastic because this will be an opportunity for at least to temporarily find a solution. Right now, there is no solution back home. Sending them back home, putting them in the middle of home way, it is not the solution. Especially many of them don't even have homes. They sold whatever the little bit that they have to move to these Chiles and to these Brazils, and now you're sending them back home to what? What exactly? So, I mean, I think the U.S. administration, the Biden administration, needs to take that into consideration. I mean, they look for the U.S. to support. Haiti has always been in the front line to help U.S. in their histories from way back when, not just U.S., but many other South American countries. We've helped them in the past. So now is the time for the U.S. administration to reach out a helping hand and support us in this period of devastation and suffering.
Yes, and back to again what happened. Just for those who might be listening or watching who aren't familiar too much with the recent history of Haiti and how that history's contributed to this mass import of recent Haitian refugees. Look, back in 2010, there was a big earthquake in Haiti. All right, right around Port-au-Prince in the capital. And the estimates show that upwards to 250,000 people lost their lives. I know that there's been some revisionist on the numbers, but I remember from the data back at that time, the numbers were 250,000 plus people dead, lots of massive displacement. Okay, that caused a huge exodus of people who were trying to then flee. Then you had this cholera epidemic that started from UN soldiers. Right after that, many more Haitians died. And then just recently, you've had multiple issues happen. Look, we had a good 5 years, I think, in Haiti where there was one president, he fulfilled his terms, but then we enter into some political turmoil that ended up with the most recent president being assassinated. That then causes, the usual, power vacuum. You got gangs roaming on the country, trying to protect people, trying to defend turf and territory. I mean, I've seen on WhatsApp some horrific footage, right, from the island. I mean, body chopped up, people with machetes. I mean, it's gotten really bad on the western part of the island. Okay, and most recently, also there was another powerful earthquake. It didn't kill that many people compared to the first one in 2010, but it just showed again how vulnerable that part of the island is. Okay, now the totality of all of those circumstances has produced a drive for anybody who's a human being, a mother, a father, a parent, to want to take your children and get out of there so that you can offer them a better life. Okay. Anywhere you can go that will take you, anywhere you can go that's going to give you opportunities to live and thrive. That's all they're asking. Now, the issue is okay. Well, okay. Let me take a step back. I heard somebody on Twitter suggest, well, why don't the Haitians just go back home and do a revolution and then fix their country? As if, the moms and the dads and the children are all going to be to send Louvertures to go and start up a revolution. To I mean, people are suggesting the most impractical things, okay, that actually will not solve problems. Absolutely, Haiti needs comprehensive government reform. Okay, I'll be the biggest critic on Haitians. I mean, I am one of them. All right, I'm an American citizen now, but that's where I came from. And so I'll be absolutely the first to critique the Haitian regime, the Haitian government, to do better for its people, okay, to sacrifice more and to just put down the partisanship and get to work and build up the country better. But that's not happening at the rate that we want. And I encourage the UN, the surrounding nations, the Dominican Republic, who I know has helped, and the US government especially, to work harder to try to find a solution that's going to help Haiti thrive on its own so that it's not constantly seeing a bleeding out of its citizenry in search of a better life. So ultimately, I do agree with what Vice President Kamala Harris said, when she was going on her immigration tour recently. You got to go to the root causes of these problems in many different ways. And I think that Haiti does need to get its act together in many ways. But when you're dealing with circumstances that nobody could have predicted, you can't predict an earthquake. You can't predict that your president's going to be assassinated. When nobody has control over these things, then it's incumbent on other nations who are receiving these refugees to take that into account and do something about it because of human dignity. Okay, those people who are flooding the border didn't cause the problems that they're experiencing. They are the victims of it. And so we all need to bring attention to that fact that Haiti needs some help. It needs to get its act together. But at the same time, the people who are fleeing weren't the cause of those problems. Okay, let's move on to what is happening. Okay, what's the response? What's been the reaction? We all know the biggest reaction, right? Which is the president basically authorizing these mass deportations. But what else is happening? Jean, could we start with you to speak a little bit again about what HHU's been doing? What's been your reaction, your organization's reaction, and NACC, what's been their reaction? And so basically, just let's have a talk about what is going on, both from a volunteer perspective, from a legal perspective, Shelley, maybe you can talk about what Ayla's doing, right? What's going on now that the dust has settled, so to speak? Please.
Right. So HHU has, like I said, has definitely stepped up, which is nothing new to us. So we've been working with NACC to bring support to these people. Like I said earlier, it's to a point where sometimes we ended up having to have 3 sets of shifts from 3, 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. and we going all the way to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, where buses are coming into the facility, to the NACC facility to look for help. And so the process is they would come in. Keep in mind, 65 personnel per bus, so it gets pretty hectic. And these people, we feeding them. So we have volunteers that come in to feed them, to translate, and get them processed. And the idea is to get them to get their paperwork completed, and then allow them to go to their prospective sponsors. So along the way, as we working that out, we finding out that, oh wow, they don't have the money, the funding to get to their sponsors. So again, the HHU is having to step up and support that effort as well, from the financial perspective, to buying tickets to get them sent to their loved ones. And so it's been extremely hard. If you can imagine, we starting early in the morning, and sometimes we don't go home till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we have to come back the same day and do it all over again. But the beautiful thing about it is we've gotten a lot of support from people from all over the U.S. that have reached out, church members, local representatives here in the city that are willing and wanting to help us, and they've come over there to volunteer their help. We have a great number of nurses that were able to come over there to provide COVID testing for the refugees as they came there. So the work is heavy, but I could tell you right now, from the amount of buses and refugees that have arrived, we're able to get them processed, get them sent to their loved ones. I mean, I can't tell you a number right now because it's been quite a bit, but yeah, it's quite a few people have now been processed and going home, and there are still more buses that are coming. So now the plan is, since our process here in Houston has been working fairly well, we also want to combine our efforts and help the San Antonio office as well, because we heard that there's also a processing center there in San Antonio, and there's one in Del Rio that we will want to reach out and try to see how we can process, because the idea is to ensure that our brothers and sisters get to their loved ones, right? So we don't want people hanging around on the thankfully they're not doing that no more, because at one time they were just dropping them off at gas stations. That's what we heard from a news reporter that had called us to kind of report this to us and say, hey, what can you guys do, because they are dropping these guys at any old gas station. But thankfully they stopped that. So now they had a process to where they would ensure that these refugees or these brothers and sisters get on the bus, on the prospective bus that's going to either bring them to Houston, San Antonio, or now I hear New Mexico is also in the picture. So we've been here, and we've been reaching out to many organizations that's there, that's throughout the U.S. or in the Del Rio area, that's wanting to connect with us, to try to, because the idea, we just want to make sure they're able to get processed, and they find help, and even whether or not to feed them, to clothe them, to you name it. So one issue that we are hearing right now is a lot of these Haitians, I think the ladies mentioned it earlier, when they get them processed, so based on the ages of their kids, for example, one family called us and said, "Oh, hey, our family is in San Antonio, but we can't find our son, and the son is 20 years old. So there's no telling, the poor guy might have been released back to Haiti," because that's what I heard as well. That some of these, a guy called me earlier this morning and said, "Yeah, we found out that they sent like 5 airplane load of people back to Haiti." So even though they a large percent of people are getting processed to go to Houston, San Antonio, and all these other processing centers, they did send some people back home to Haiti still. And this is the issue. So now you're going to have all these, maybe, I don't know if it's young people and old people, but I think for the most part, it's probably the younger kids from 20s and older that are going back home. And so they're going back home to nothing, So we would have hoped that they would allow them the opportunity to stay here in the U.S., get processed, get some kind of temporary support, I don't know, from the Asylum or TPS, to at least give them some time to figure it out. Because after the hell that they just been through trying to get here, now you're just gonna send them back to more hell. It's like this doesn't make sense in our book. But like I said, I mean, for all those that are wanting to support the organization, please go to HoustonHaitiansUnited.org. get in contact with us. We have a phone number that you can still reach out to us if you're wanting to support and help, and we can ensure that you have or provided the information, the links and stuff like that if you do want to volunteer, so you can properly get registered and come out and support. So the fight continue. It's not over with yet, but yeah, we're going to stay on until we make sure that the job is done.
I had a question. As far as the processing centers go, and this is just something I don't know, maybe some of the readers are wondering as well, is what separates the people who are sent to processing centers versus the ones who were sent back? Because as we know, and as my understanding is, Del Rio does not look the same anymore. So at one point, 14,000 people under bridges, it's mostly cleared out at this point. So we know that many people have been sent back or sent to Haiti. So, you mentioned sponsors and getting the people to sponsor. So are the people who are in the processing centers right now people who have a sponsor? And do you know more about what does that mean really to be a sponsor? Because what I think a sponsor is legally may be different from what you're speaking of.
Okay, so the understanding that we have is while the people are in Del Rio, they would get interviewed, and if they do say they have a family member is what we call it, is what we consider calling the sponsor. If they have a family member here in the U.S. and they've provided that telephone number, I think they would call that family member and ensure that this person is truly their relative, and from there they were allowed to get on the bus. Right, so that's because from the time they get on the bus, that's clear to us that they have identified a sponsor, and now they just need to get to that person. So for those that either did not have one, or then in that case, they maybe their shipment, they were sent back to Haiti in this point. But yeah, anybody that were processed were allowed to come to San Antonio, Houston, or anywhere at the processing center. They mean that they have a family member that's here in the U.S. and they just simply need to get to the home of that family member.
Okay. So I wonder if they were also allowed to do credible, fair interviews for asylum. I don't know if any of you guys know about that.
Yeah, so thankfully we have some lawyers. Actually, we have a lawyer that's been working with the organization, and she's connected with the association of other lawyers that are out to support. Her name is Alexandra. So she's been in the front line to help out from the legal standpoint. So she's been providing a lot of good information to the people. And that's why I was saying this conversation right here is really, really good as well, because this can hope for those that are listening, this can give them some more additional information on, which direction they need to go. Now that they've gotten to their sponsors or whatever, their family members, what's next? So that this is kind of important as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chinwe, do you want to contribute?
I think the only thing I want to add is to make sure that individuals that have been processed, if they can retain a lawyer, if they can afford it, they should get one. If not, they should look to some of the nonprofit organizations like the Catholic Charities and that offer free legal services to help, because most times not starting out on the onset to get things right can make it almost impossible for you to remain in the United States. And then also, I just want to add that I think most of us that are immigrants, I think we just have this lukewarm attitude towards the machinery that needs to get things going. Most of us, we don't pay attention to what is going on in Washington. We don't participate in the lobbying process. But I think if we all could band together, and push for immigration reform, I think it's kind of stalled. The Democrats wanted to include it in the 3-point-something trillion bill that they were trying to pass, but the parliamentarian, I think, didn't approve that. So it's kind of stalled, because if that is true, then most of these people hopefully there'll be some path that may be carved out for them to remain in the United States. I think that's about the only other thing I want to add.
Okay. And
Yeah,
thank you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, so definitely, please, as far as you guys that's on board that are lawyers, this is gonna be there's gonna be a big need, right? So now that they've gotten to their sponsors, there's gonna be a big need from the legal perspective to get these people some help. So so hopefully for those that are listening right now, I'm sure you guys' information is there. At least they could have some people to connect with, because one or two lawyers not gonna be able to do it, as you can imagine, right? So they're gonna definitely need some support. So Mac, maybe you could provide the ladies and yourself, if you're available, to provide some legal advice.
Yeah. So, uh, Catholic Charities, okay, as well as the YMCA, they love getting volunteer attorneys to come and help migrants, okay, bring their claims to court. Uh, Immigration cases, they can be a little daunting sometimes. There's lots of procedural rules, and the federal immigration, court rules can. You got to be careful when you go through them. So certainly, a regular individual is not going to know how to navigate that themselves. Okay, they need an attorney, but even for the attorneys, it can be a little daunting. So this is why organizations like Catholic Charities and YMCA, they actually provide you mentors to help you if you are an attorney who doesn't do a whole lot of immigration, but you want to get your foot in the door to help some of these folks out. You will have the opportunity to contact one of those organizations, because I would say that they're probably the two largest organizations that do help in this way. Okay, provide pro bono services, but again, you're not going to be able to make a dent in this unless you actually get the help. We need lawyers to actually contribute time. Anyway, and trust me, there's a lot of lawyers out there, who may be able to help. So let's move on to where we go from here. Okay, we got about 12 minutes left. And so, guys, what does the future hold? Okay, what do you want to see? What is your best piece of advice or takeaway that you would give to a new migrant who's been allowed to stay in the country temporarily while their case gets to be heard? And what do you want to see for Haiti and U.S. policy? So, Shelle, you want to start?
Yes, I thought Chinwe brought up a very good point about immigration reform. A lot of people are concerned: is immigration reform dead? Is there anywhere for us to go from here? Because the immigration reform package, to my understanding, was not going to be included in the budget reconciliation. Of course, a lot of people are concerned, and I get this question a lot of times, and it's, what's going to happen with that Biden reform package? Are we going to be able to get our green cards? Are we going to be able to get citizenship? Are we going to be able to get protection? With the budget reconciliation, the reform package that was in it was to help TPS holders. Okay, so TPS holders, those are the temporary protected status. DACA, that's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Those are the young people that came into the United States, no fault of their own, but perhaps through their parents, and they were very young. So the protections through them, and also the essential workers. So giving them, the possibilities of getting a green card or other visas or protections to be able to stay here and live in the United States. Because for those who are not familiar, TPS, temporary protected status, is just a temporary protection. It does not give you a green card. It does not give you a pathway to citizenship. And so I think, where do we go from here as far as, a legal standpoint goes? It would be, I think, very similar to what Chinwe said, which is, us really taking an interest in what's going on on Capitol Hill and DC, and trying to lobby those efforts, trying to lobby your cause of immigration reform. I think a lot of people were very hopeful that when President Biden came into office, that this could be a possibility and that this could definitely happen. And with the bills that have been on the floors being argued, you know, there was just a lot of hope, and there's still a lot of hope. It may happen, it may not, and so I would definitely encourage people to, for their perspective, seek out advice for an immigration attorney to see what you can do right now instead of just waiting around for immigration reform, because honestly, we don't know if that is going to be a possibility. We'll just have to keep waiting and see what may happen. But I think on an individual basis, what you can do is talk to an immigration attorney to see if there's anything right now that you can do for yourself to at least put in a petition and perhaps get some protections, and also maybe get a work permit. So even though you may not be granted a green card, you may be able to get something like a work permit, or with asylum cases, maybe you didn't win asylum, but while you're waiting, you will get that work permit. Okay, so there are different things and different petitions that you may be able to put in that may allow you to get protected and allow you to work while you're waiting. So I think from an individual perspective, if you're listening and you're wondering, what can I do to better myself in terms of my immigration situation, it would be to definitely seek out either an immigration attorney or, as Mac mentioned, Catholic Charities or some other organization that is going to help you to keep going and make a better life for yourself and your family.
Yeah. Chinwe, what about the future?
I like to be optimistic. So I believe that the future is going to be better. I strongly hope and believe that at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, the immigration reform will go through. Because without that, there's just it's just what we've had for years. Like when you said when you came to the United States, it's the same law that's been in place since then. Nothing has really changed except that different presidents issue executive orders to, fast track certain areas, but the immigration law has been the same for years. And there are limitations to people that cross there's not much option for people that come in illegally, especially if they don't seek asylum or if there's no TPS. There's really not much options for them to adjust status and change from that illegal status to become legal in the United States. So, like I said, I just feel immigrants, those of us that are first generation immigrants, and or even some of our kids that are born here, I think we need to pay more attention to these issues, because even though I'm sure most of us, at least all of us on this floor, hopefully are US citizens, but we can't forget the journey that we had to get to where we are. And it's usually not an easy journey. So I think what is lacking and why the immigration reform has stalled for decades is because there's just not a lot of voices. It's just, there's not much push. People tend to not think if it doesn't apply to you, why worry? And then the people that need it, they don't have a voice. They're either out of status or they don't have the resources. So hopefully, I'm just hoping that that will come to pass. And then I'm also hoping that the Biden administration, they've try to self-correct. That hopefully they will expand their self-correction and figure out a proper way for the Haitians that are impacted by this surge to be able to remain in the United States and treat them better in a more humane way. My hope is that they will expand the TPS. At least that will be the easiest thing to do. That will allow them to at least stay here and get work authorization and slowly figure out the system. And then, like I always say, I like to always be optimistic. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, thank you, Jean Michel.
Yes, I'm definitely there. I'm the same way. I like to always say that it can't go bad forever. At some point, it has to change, right? So, and I definitely believe that it will, and I'm in agreement with you there. We do need to get organized, because until we get organized and come together as one voice, things will always stay the same. And I believe that's one of the things that Houston Haitian United is doing, is uniting our people to come under this banner, so we can speak, and so people can hear us, right? So we're connected with the Congressman Al Green, Sheila Jackson Lee. They've always responded to us and are willing to work with us. So whenever we do have a issue or concern, that we can bring it to them, and we will hope that they will take action. So definitely in agreements there. I mean, I hope that as well, that the refugees that are listening, that just like to tell them that, hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Just be hopeful, and listen to the advice that's been given to you here. That because even though TPS is not available, but there are other options that you can go and apply for and make yourself legal. And stay out of trouble, right? Because I definitely agree that if you're given the opportunity to stay here and you cause issue, then yeah, at this point, like the laws have stated, then you could get sent back, and until you, because at the end of the day, you need to respect the laws of this country. And I think as Haitians here, that are given this opportunity, we normally come here for work and to be able to provide for our families. That's never been an issue from that perspective. So just stay encouraged and get connected with organizations, go to your lawyers, and try to get some legal advice, and so you could find a better life. So I mean, I feel like this conversation today was good. And hopefully, for those that are able to hear it, will actually take some of the advice that's been given here. Again, Houston Haitian United is here. Please connect with us, and we're here to help you. We also connected with, like I said earlier, some lawyers, some Haitian lawyers, a Lawyers Alliance that have reached out to us. So we're connected with them now, so we could provide some information there as well. So as well as the Catholic organization that's here in Houston. So yeah, we'll be able to provide that info as well to our fellow Haitians. So just we're here to support, and so we always hopeful that there will be a change from the governmental perspective. We had a visit from the ambassador not too long ago. So they were talking about constitutional reform, and there at least some good conversation there. I mean, I really feel like at some point they do need to get the diaspora involved. I feel like we will play a big part in helping to change Haiti, because I do believe that Haitians can change Haitian situations. There's been some other hands involved to kind of prevent that situation, but like I said, I'm always hopeful that change will come, and change will come for the better, and Haiti will be in a better spot. We will rise again eventually.
Yeah, thank you guys. So to close out, let me just add a few points. Number one, this whole topic can become a contentious one because you're dealing with people and their livelihoods, nation states, borders, boundaries, and unfortunately, that issue we all have, which is called tribalism. And tribalism, this is one of my theories in life. I'm always saying that one of the roots to a lot of human conflict and problems is tribalism. We all get into our little groups, and then we want to just say, well, you're not me, or they. And then we create walls that doesn't ever solve anything. Rather, it might keep the peace like a band-aid that will later on just blow up and erupt. So it's a contentious issue. We get that. And I think the biggest sign that it's a contentious issue was that the president's own envoy to Haiti resigned in protest just this past week because he didn't like how the Haitians were just being sent back without any kind of process or any kind of procedure, any kind of avenue to at least let their voices get heard. And so, even internally, all right. The other thing I want to make a point about is that this is not a political issue. Okay. One of the things that I've told our guests and that I tell everybody is that this should not be about politics, right? This should not be left versus right, Democrat, Republican. We live in one country and we all have same common problems. And so we have to find common solutions for them. And unfortunately, this topic sometimes just goes down into left versus right when it shouldn't be. Like Chinwe said earlier, the law hasn't really changed, but every single president, because the president under the Constitution is the one who has the prerogative over this issue of immigration, okay, the executive branch mainly, and foreign policy. But every president, whether it's Democrat or Republican, has had to deal and wrestle with this. And sometimes they have a lot of bad options. Okay, even if they might be a friend to immigrants, they have a lot of bad options. This whole build a wall discussion was going on in the late 80s. I mean, the issue of trying to balance, human freedom and letting people in and refugees against the issue of border security has been going on for decades. We're still in this, and we have to come together as a country and talk about it and provide really good, effective solutions that actually it would not make everybody happy. There's no way to do that, not with this kind of contentious issue. Okay. But that's the only way we're going to get out of this. It's to come together and talk about it and try to get the least bad option, okay, that's available to us all. And so, one last thing for contrarian purposes, I know earlier it was mentioned that Haitian refugees were being whipped. Guys, just one thing, the news media has basically refuted that, suggesting that these were horse reins. But when you look at it, I mean, it certainly looks like people were being beaten down and chased. So I don't like how it looks, period. But I just wanted to bring that fact out because I just want to make sure that we were speaking factually. Because the observer, even the eyewitness, he was like, yeah, you're right. They weren't being whipped. But the fact still that horses are being used to basically chase people into a river is problematic for me. And it's not because I'm of Haitian descent, but it's because it would hurt my heart. It break my heart for that to be done to any human being. Okay, especially if all they're carrying in their hand is not a weapon, but it's food, right?
Exactly.
It's food, and so we need to all just do better. And I'm thankful that you guys all came with your wisdom to gather together and speak some words of encouragement so we can wrap this up. And all the folks out there, if you're an attorney, please get on board and help migrants get their voices heard. If you are not an attorney, but you just want to help, get in contact with National Association of Christian Churches, NACC, helps.org, and or HoustonHaitiansUnited.org to help however way you can. And if you're just a regular listener and viewer, obviously, thank you again for spending time with us today. And so we're all signing off. And thank you guys for participating today.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you.